Hey, welcome to Optimize Your Body with Martin Silva, where we talk raw, uncut facts to truly help you optimize your body. Hey guys, before we get this podcast rolling, I would like to let you know that I have some slots available for my online coaching packages, whether your goal is just to get in shape or if you were looking to get on stage and compete, as a bikini model or physique athlete, bodybuilder. Please reach out and give me an email at admin@optimizeyourbody.com. So send an email to admin@optimizeyourbody.com. Also, to go get your free recipe ebooks and your free training plan, just head over to my current website, martin-silva.co.uk, martin-silva.co.uk, and all you have to do is enter your email address into the pop-up box to receive. Enjoy. James Alexander Ellis. I have pro muscle model, Wbff muscle model. In fact, he actually placed within the top 3 in the world at one point. And I actually met James through a supplement company I used to be sponsored by back in the day. Obviously, all of you know how I feel about supplements now, but this was back then. And so I'm honored that James, at the drop of a hat, was here and he's in the building. How you going, James?
Very well, thank you, Martin. Thanks for having me. You'd be pleased to know I feel the same way about supplements too, having been through the mill a few times.
Yep, that's actually it's a good point, because we met through that world, right? Through the supplement world, through Cymex Nutrition, and obviously my concepts and my kind of paradigm was shattered in a way, because I shifted everything over, to actually learning a lot more about the science. So I started actually getting much better results when I started really focusing on just eating more whole foods. That's not to say all supplements are bad, but when I kind of cut them out, maybe it's the artificial sweeteners or whatever it is, my relationship with food started to improve. I started to eat just naturally veering more towards whole foods because I was, I guess, eating more of them. What's your thoughts on the importance of supplements, mate, on that note?
Something I've spoken about many times, and obviously, like yourself, been in the industry for so many years, something that we get asked constantly, whether it's just as a personal trainer, your client says, what supplements do you want me to take? They assume that you're going to sell them a whole cupboard full of supplements. And even when I was taking a cupboard full, I never really passed that many on, because I've always been one of those trainers that likes to let the kind of my fitness dictate my business, not the other way around. Probably I've never been made it to millionaire status in this industry. But I couldn't really bring myself to say to my client, you have to have BCA, you have to have pre-workout, you've got to have casein, because casein digests so slowly, you're going to get massive. And you've got to have whey protein and a whole other list of things. I used to go, even back then when it was Cymex was our kind of boss, and since then I've gone lighter on the supplements and said, look, protein powder, great. Some of the vitamins and minerals that you might be missing, if you're involved in intense activity. Never gone too much further than that, really, just because even from the start, I knew deep down inside that whole foods are the way forwards, and you can get most of your nutrients from plants. And these days, vegans have shown us you don't even need meat to be a performance athlete. So God forbid you have to have supplements to be able to build muscle.
Absolutely, yeah. And I just wanted to say on that topic, obviously, you were probably a little bit of a step ahead of where I was in terms of, your relationship with food and what you actually knew in terms of eating intuitively, which is something I always talk about to the listeners, is actually, when you get to a point where you're eating based on what your body needs, okay, because we obviously were born with these signals to get us to eat intuitively, but then when you, obviously all the processed food industry kind of gets people sucked into, buying this product or that packaged product, if you like. And it kind of takes you away from, what we were kind of innately born with kind of thing, right? And I was just going to say, because with the supplements, with your clients, you said obviously you've always recommended to them, to focus on the big rocks, essentially, eat whole foods. And because the bottom line is, right, when you're kind of eating whole foods for the most part, it's very hard to overeat, I find, right? Because all the nutrients and fibre, whatnot, you find in these whole foods. But also, when you get your training programming, when you're training properly, obviously if someone's hiring you as a trainer, they've got that part covered. But those two alone, and obviously sleep, I guess are going to surpass by a long shot. Supplements wouldn't even come into the equation, right, James?
I would agree, and I think the problem is that we've started to, the kind of fitness world has seen supplements as a kind of a quick fix or a magic pill, and unfortunately, we got to a point very quickly where guys are taking 3 protein shakes a day to get their protein intake up. So not only is that probably not the best way to get extra protein because it's not satiating. These products are full of sweeteners, which I'm not going to bash sweeteners. I'm a sweetener fanatic. I'm probably in better shape because I've discovered artificial sweeteners, and that's a whole other discussion. But they're full of artificial things, which in theory might be bad for your body. You're not getting the satiation that you get. You don't get the thermodynamic benefit of digesting protein. And then if you zoom even further out than that, maybe we don't need that much protein anyway. So the whole chugging protein shakes back to back throughout the day. I mean, that was me for a little while, but I never really wanted it to be my clients. I just knew that was probably not the best way forward. And we've now got this new world of convenience fitness snacks. It started with the Quest bar 10 years ago, and now every newsagent has got a carb killer or a Quest bar or something like that. So now we're grabbing these high protein snacks on the go.
And I always say to people, it's almost like protein has become a magical macronutrient. You know what I mean? Because it's got the word protein on it, it's all of a sudden super healthy. But when you look at the actual ingredient list on a lot of these protein bars and whatnot, there's heaps of different chemicals in them. Absolutely. And as you mentioned, the artificial sweeteners, which I'd like to talk to you real quickly about as well, because artificial sweeteners is kind of interesting in that the studies gone into them, because most of them have been done on rats and whatnot. The bottom line, go on.
I find it really interesting. You're in a topic that really interests me and has done for many years, so please carry on.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, artificial sweeteners, we know that they can have an impact on the gut flora. Most of the studies have been done in rats, but the bottom line is, we didn't evolve eating them. They're essentially chemicals which have been processed in, a laboratory for the best part or whatever, manufactured in somewhere along those lines. And, they do, based on my experience, as I said, about my kind of journey with supplements was, it used to make me crave certain things personally, because obviously some sweeteners are let's say hundreds of times sweeter than sugar.
Yeah.
And although there's no calories in them, which is what they get you on in terms of the marketing, they still do have an impact, because, if something is that much sweeter than sugar, then, people have been saying that it kind of tricks your brain into thinking you're having sugar. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting what you said about artificial sweeteners helping you and getting you in shape, because I can understand where you're coming from, because it's like a quick fix, but without having... So explain that a bit more, James.
It was many, many years ago. I was probably only early on in my training career, and I just started to gather that it wasn't high or low fat that was going to dictate maybe how healthy something was. It was one of my friends I used to train with. He said, "Oh, that's full of sugar, you realise?" And it was one of those fridge milkshakes.
Yeah.
We all drank loads of those.
I used to love them back in the day. Oh, yeah.
I was guzzling one day, and my mate knew I was into the gym, and he knew I was trying to get a six-pack. And he said to me, "That's full of sugar." And I was sort of like, "What? So? What does that mean?" Literally, I was just didn't know. He said, "Look on the back," and it was 30 grams. I was like, "It's only 10 grams. He goes, "That's per serving." And I looked up and I worked out it had 35 grams of sugar in, or more. Maybe it was 60 grams, because those things tasted good.
Oh, yeah, incredible.
And then I started to realise that perhaps if I got sugar out of my diet, and then, in the long run, I ended up being a real fan of ketogenic dieting, low-carb dieting, but short term, I started to cut out sugar, but I had to replace it with sweeteners. So it was mostly aspartame-based sweeteners to start with, so it was sugar-free soft drinks, sweeteners in my coffee and my tea, and it was just sweetened everything. And to this day, I still have a hell of a lot of sweetened products.
Okay.
And I would see it's almost a bit of an addiction for me.
Yeah.
It's because I've got this voracious sweet tooth. Mm-hmm. But I think with any addiction, if you're going to try and replace it with something rather than manage it properly, like you said about eating whole foods being a better solution.
Oh, it was a slow process though, yeah.
Because once you start eating more whole foods, you appreciate natural sweetness.
Definitely.
You're not looking for this artificial chocolate.
That's exactly right, yeah.
So, I've literally got a Quest bar in my bag.
Yeah, Quest bars are probably my favourite when it comes to protein bars.
Yeah, I find the Quest bars, we'll probably talk about this in a minute, Quest bars are a little bit less kind of bloating and anything in large quantities, but I found certain sweeteners and certain types of bars will bloat me and screw with my digestive system. and the end result is not very pleasant.
Interesting. So how do you stay lean, James, all year round anyway? What's your secret? Because obviously we both managed to stay in shape all year round. I've explained my story. Enlighten us, James.
Well, mine's driven out of vanity and self-obsession, to be perfectly honest. And also, since I've been blessed over the last few years to be an ambassador, I'm always being some kind of ambassador for some company, whether it's my own business or I'm contracted to look good. So having to look good, so I can look good on not just the gram, because everyone loves a bit of that, but if I have got a photo shoot not lined up, at Cymex they used to say, we'll give you 4 weeks notice or 3 weeks notice. So if you had to be photo shoot ready in 3 weeks, you can't be much above 10% body fat.
Yeah, you've got to be.
So I'm just very used to, I'd say, embarrassingly, I guess I'm always on diet. I've been out here, obviously, doing these DNA presentations. But all the guys around me are like, oh, yeah, you're on a weird diet, aren't you? I'm like, well, I'm having steak and salad. I mean, it's not too restricted. But I like, as you know, I'm a fan of low-carb dieting.
And high fat. I was going to come to that. Yeah,
I've always been a fan of that. It always felt right for me. It was actually it helped me to be in better health having a low carb, high fat diet. I don't go around preaching about ketogenic diets or low carb diets. I don't push them onto my clients, but I've seen a lot of personal anecdotal health benefits, and also I've had clients that reported very specific things like improved sleep patterns, improved energy levels, improved skin, improved satiation, appetite regulation. And but I guess the staying in shape year round is, when I was a kid I wasn't in shape, so after years of searching to get that cover model physique, once you've got it, you don't want to let it go.
No, exactly.
It's like when you're in between competitions, in between photo shoots, any deviation in that level of body fat is quite hard to swallow. Yeah,
absolutely. And how do you actually, so you said you do eat, obviously you have adequate protein, because protein satiates you, right? That's the most satiating macronutrient. You eat a decent amount of meat from what I've seen, and just protein in general. Fats as well. Run us through how you, because obviously, for the listeners to actually relate in terms of you staying in shape, because obviously you said you have artificial sweeteners. There's 0 calories in them is the one benefit, right? So one way or another, you don't stay too far out. Like you said, let's just say 10% body fat most of the year round. Do you actually consume a lot of fibre and vegetables with those meals to keep you satiated, as well as the protein and fats?
Yes, and actually, as you said, it's not because I necessarily enjoy eating vegetables, and I do eat for pleasure. I'm not just eating for function. But I mean, I just know that when I don't have the right vitamins and minerals, after a few days of if I go off diet and I eat rubbish for a few days, if I haven't had green vegetables particularly, I can tell after a few days my body starts to feel not quite right. And also, you just know the importance of fibre, and you touched on the digestive system. We all underplay how important that is until it starts to go wrong. Like if you've ever been constipated, or you've ever had an upset stomach, or you've ever had stomach pains, or whatever, you realise how important that little secondary part of your body is.
Definitely.
Having learned the hard way a few times in my life, I make sure I keep my fibre intake high. And I'll usually get that from green cruciferous vegetables.
Cruciferous vegetables being, just for listeners,
broccoli. I don't know where that term comes from.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Sounds like a dinosaur reference.
I know.
I believe it's the fibrous green vegetables, but also including like cabbages and your
cauliflower, kale, spinach, that kind of stuff.
The things you probably want to steam before you eat them.
Of course.
A raw food junkie.
Exactly. No, I was going to say about that as well. About you touched on a good point there about eating vegetables, and I've actually kind of lost my train of thought here a bit. But you said you, obviously, to stay in shape, you eat the vegetables and you eat the fats and whatnot, but you said, you do eat for pleasure, right? Which is what all of us do. You've got to, is a social thing, but also we all like to have the mouth pleasure, right? The taste on a regular basis. But as I've said to the listeners a couple of times, I've got to the point now where I actually like the taste of vegetables, right? So I intuitively go for those things. And that's not necessarily because I enjoy the taste of them more than having something like a pizza, obviously. But I just kind of veer towards them now naturally, same as yourself, right? So obviously you've connected to the fact that if you don't have enough fibre or whatever that is, the chemical compounds in vegetables, you get issues with the gut. And I was going to say I've learned the hard way myself. I've had major gut issues in the past, and I've realised that if I overeat certain things, or if I undereat the stuff you were talking about, it can trigger off those problems. But talk to us a little bit more about exactly it is what you do, because obviously you have to stay in shape for some of the stuff you do with the modeling and whatnot. And I know you've been like an advanced level personal trainer for a while as well. Talk to the listeners, to tell us a little bit more about what the day in life of like a day-to-day life of JAE, please, mate.
A typical day for me involves, I guess, juggling 3 different types of business. I still do personal training, and I kind of, having enjoyed it 10 years ago, I never thought I would give up completely, because it keeps you in touch with reality. Nothing more rewarding than greeting your client, watching them make progress, seeing how rewarding it is for them. So I still do a little bit of one-to-one training, not so much anymore. Been really growing as a competition prep coach since probably 2014. And as a posing coach, as you well know.
Yeah, definitely.
That's our relationship. And helping fit young boys and girls get their pro cards is always rewarding.
Yeah.
But I guess what I've done over the last few years is I have tried to move myself from someone who's seen as a fitness competitor that also does coaching to the best educator and the best coach, someone that used to be a bodybuilder. So I consider myself an ex-pro bodybuilder now.
Oh, awesome.
It's when I say that, it sort of seems a bit sad, because I feel like, that was my world for so many years.
Yeah.
And that was all that mattered. And having the sponsor was really important, because that added to my brand identity. And I had many great years with Cymex. Then I moved on to a company called Sportholics. I've just finished a contract with them. So actually, I don't have a nutrition sponsor at the moment. I'm not really that bothered.
Yeah.
I've been moving my business towards the sort of educational side. And actually, speaking of being in shape, I'm less interested in being in shape now. It's been a really interesting journey. It's been quite fast. Doing things where the value that I give is more information, educational. It's so important for me to look good. I've got to look. I have to look a certain way in the industry.
Healthy, isn't it? Really, it's about looking healthy.
And actually, I'm more interested in my health recently than not, because you and I will both admit that bodybuilding and fitness competing is rarely good for your health.
No, it's very not.
There are habits that you might undertake that could be deemed healthy, but a lot of negative habits as well. And we don't like to talk about the kind of the body dysmorphia and the negative mental health elements that affects a lot of people. Something I talk to my clients about whenever they start fitness competition. I say, look, you know what you're getting yourself in for here. And I can already tell by the time I've signed a client to a comp prep, I already know what kind of issues they might have, because I'll see how active they are on Instagram, or I'll see that when I'm on my DMs, they're always in their DMs.
Yeah,
and I'm like, "What are you doing?
Active, yeah.
Who are you talking to? What are you?"
Yeah,
and like,
it gets obsessive.
Yeah, and you can see when people, the more often people post, and I hope I'm not going to ruffle anyone's feathers here if they hear this, but it's almost like a little algorithm of the more someone posts, the more regularly they post, the more likely they're going to have issues around this stuff.
Definitely,
because the more someone posts,
chasing that kind of attention and dopamine hit or wherever it is.
Exactly, and also it shows that they've potentially got less going on in their life as well. And that was me for a while. I post on Instagram twice a day, every day. I would post to a schedule. And I think I posted once in the last 4 days.
Yeah.
And that's only because I've got something interesting to say, because I'm abroad at the moment.
Yeah.
Doing some cool stuff. So it's there's a responsibility for the coach to try and keep their client in check. I'm not a psychologist, but I try and say to them, look, don't get too excited about what everybody else is doing. Don't compare yourself to other people. And don't get too obsessed about likes and follows and engagement and stuff. Very hard. If someone told me that 4 years ago, I'd have been like, get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to get my following up.
That's it. That's exactly.
But it's also saying to people, look, where are you going with this? Because is this a business model for you? Because just having lots of followers isn't going to be a business for you. It might make you happy short term, like you said, like the dopamine hit and the validation. But I spent a long time not leveraging my following properly, and it was just a vanity thing for me.
Exactly the same.
People used to say to me, "Oh, you must be making a lot of money out of this following," and I was like, "No, not making any."
Yeah.
They're like, "What?
Yeah.
How could you not be?"
Yeah, exactly. People get kind of like delusional about that, right?
Yeah.
I was just gonna. That's great that you mentioned that, because I was in exactly the same place. So obviously I had that one, the Giles Crofter. You've had the Giles Crofter photo shoots, yeah? So he puts together some amazing professional pictures, and he's a very talented photographer, and he also has a big following, right? So that kind of blew my following up, and then I got sucked into that. I've mentioned this to the listeners before, and as you said, I was exactly the same. So I was posting pictures every day, obviously half naked, pretty much every picture, and you're getting all these followers and likes, and you're saying to people, yeah, I'm trying to build a business, online coaching, whatever. But deep down, I think there's more to it. I think a lot of it stems that stems from insecurities in a sense, right? And also the fact that, it kind of is like chasing attention. It's the same sort of thing as insecurities. But you also mentioned then about body dysmorphia as well, right? So when you have been critiqued against some of the best, literally in your boots, right? You're being critiqued and judged against some of the best physiques on the planet, right? Several times as a muscle model.
Yeah.
And I looked at your transformation actually, and I saw the pictures, and it's crazy, like the journey you've been on. You started off doing it, back in the day. But yeah, how do you actually deal with those kind of challenges, James? Because I can kind of identify with the same sort of thing, really, with body dysmorphia, and actually always kind of, when you're chasing the aesthetics, which is kind of what this podcast is all about, is the fact that you need to prioritize health. So now, as you mentioned then, I prioritize health, and that to me is a priority. And as a result of that, the aesthetics, I've aesthetically kind of developed, I've actually achieved kind of the best shape of my life as a result of me really taking care of myself more. Whereas when you go down the road of chasing aesthetics and how you look, it's a never-ending struggle. And I always say to people, you really have got to embrace the process and not obsess too much on the progress.
Yes.
But yeah, talk to us a little bit more about the setbacks and challenges you faced as a world-renowned muscle model.
Well, it was a fast journey for me. I went from being a personal trainer that was in good shape to suddenly somebody invited me to do a photo shoot. Then I looked at the photos, I was like, this looks like something out of a magazine. I was really proud about them. This is in 2011. And then suddenly I was being invited to do a fitness competition in Northern Ireland called NIFMA, NIFMA, Northern Ireland Fitness Model Association. And I didn't realise back then that being invited to do a fitness competition didn't really mean anything. Yeah. Because since then I've got hundreds of clients. They're like, oh, some promoters invited me to compete at his show. I'm like, darling, that's really cute. And they're like, you have to pay to register. And they're like, oh, okay. It's like, it's not a golden hello. But back then I was really excited, and my boss said to me, yeah, you should do it. This is Emma Brace. She was my PT manager years ago at LA Fitness. She said, you should do it. You make a great bodybuilder. Look at your legs. You'll be incredible. So I did this comp, and I enjoyed it. And then I immediately got sucked into the whirlwind of progressing. I wanted to do Miami Pro. I won that. And I went to Wbff. When I won that, I got my pro card. So overnight, I went from considering a competition to being competing on the world championship level. I was like, this is crazy. And you've been in a similar stage as well, so you know what it's like. It's a very fast transition.
100%, yeah.
And I guess one of the processes I went through was having a new type of body dysmorphia, which went from having basically a perfect physique and not being happy with it.
Yes.
And going onto stages, and like you said, when you're judged so so harshly against other people that are in amazing shape, it just reaches a new level of dysmorphia. And actually you internalize it, and it doesn't bother you so much because that's part of your sport is getting better. So as well as trying to fine-tune how you look and your appearance, like a sportsman would fine-tune their pass or their pitch or their putt, we're trying to work on our physique. So it sounds like it would be really damaging to you, but actually, remember all the years of going through the motion, it was just got to improve. I never really never took it as negativity when I got the feedback from the judge. The feedback for me in the early years was always, you need to bring up your upper body. Yeah. I was always Quadzilla.
Quadzilla, that's right.
We would like to see you with more weight on your upper body. So I obsessed religiously about building my upper body. Rarely trained my lower body. I still do the same thing. I still train I train less now, obviously, but when I do, I train my upper body. And so I went through that, and I was able to make those gains, and then I was able to improve my placings and get quite close to winning. And I guess the body dysmorphia stuff kicks in as soon as you back off from that, because when you're at the very, very top level, and someone tells you you're not quite good enough, you can be like, all right, but I'm pretty close. That was always my mindset. When I got third at these pro shows, third at Worlds, then it was third at Europeans, then third at Worlds. And everyone was like, oh man, you must be a bit disappointed. I was like, not really. I'm bloody proud of myself. Yeah, I never dreamed I'd be doing this. I've just won money. I won $1,000 in my last 3 shows. How many, these days people do pro shows. Yeah. And they're not winning anything other than a tub of protein, or an invite to another show somewhere. That's it. So to be able to win at do well at pro shows, it never got to me that I wasn't quite lean enough to take the win, or it might have been my shoulders that let me down. Yeah. Because I knew that I looked awesome. Yeah. And you have to sort of give you that bit of credit. But backing away from that, that's when the body dysmorphia starts to kick in.
Yeah.
So I did my last comp just under 2 years ago now. So I'm 2 years off the stage. I did my last major photo shoot, my last cover about a year ago, 6 months ago.
And you were planning for that to be your very last?
Yeah.
I don't never say never, is it, James? You can bounce back at any time, can't you? You've got to watch this guy.
I definitely could. But it'd definitely be to the detriment of my health.
Yeah, 100%.
Which, I guess that's perfect for the topic of these podcasts.
Definitely.
And I'm aware that health is important. And actually, at the moment, I like being fit. But, when I see people in my industry that I haven't seen for a while, they're like, hey, and they're looking at me and their eyes are saying, what happened to you? And every now and again, I bumped into Simon Barnes the other day. Judging. Simon Barnes comes running up to me. For the listeners that don't know, Simon Barnes is a notorious London fitness photographer. He's photographed everyone. He helps everyone on their way up. He does photo shoots. There's a lot of free photo shoots and a lot of good networking. And everyone's got a lot of good time for Simon. Most of us are shot with him. I've not seen him for ages. And he goes, oh, you look amazing. And he was being genuine. Whereas I've had other people going, hey, mate, you look great. Now you've lost some weight. Good for you.
Yeah, and it's like an insult.
Thanks.
Yeah.
But Simon looked really ecstatic. He said, you look amazing. Good for you. It's great. I was like, okay, I feel all right.
Yeah, because you look healthier. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's probably what it is, isn't it? Your face is not, like a vampire.
Yeah. I've got the happy medium between like a slightly bloated bodybuilder's face, because I've got my testosterone levels through the roof, or I've got the diet face, the competitor, who is admittedly testosterone levels through the roof, but he hasn't eaten for a few days.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got the happy medium at the moment, which I quite like.
Yeah.
So the body dysmorphia stuff, going through the process, it never bothered me. That was just part of my sporting endeavour. But as a human being trying to cope with coming out of that machine, being spat out the other side, it's been a little bit harder to deal with. And I think I'm at the point where I'm like fairly comfortable with myself.
That's great, man.
Fairly comfortable is good for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll take that any day. I was going to say, you just mentioned then about to the detriment of your health, right? So if you were to do another comp, what exactly did you mean? Because I wanted to talk a little bit more about like mental health as well, because we've just been talking about that and we're on the topic. Talk to us about what you meant. Like if you were to give us an example of, if you were to do another show, what would give? Would it be mental and physical or emotional? Or talk to us.
That's a really good question. And I think the first thing that I would be aware I would need to give on would be my social, family and relationship time. Because once you focus so hard on something, which you have to do well in a fitness comp, nobody ever did like a half-assed attempt and then won.
No.
You have to put everything into it, like with any kind of sport. And I know that will pull away time from not only my time with my girlfriend, it will pull away time from my business, which I'm, like I said, spend all day juggling, and maybe some of my family and friend commitments. And that's the only part that's really hard to swallow. I can take the kind of restricting my diet thing because it only really affects me, and I can take the fact that I might have to go and do extra training. That's fine, but it's when it impacts on these other things like family, business. You can't get that back. That lost
can't get that time back. No.
So that's the kind of the one side of it, and I guess the other side would be there is a health detriment, I guess. Without going into too much detail, the seedy, murky world of the performance enhancement.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't want to be the first to talk about it.
No, I don't go into too much detail because I don't think you really need to. But, I mean, the murky world of the performance enhanced athlete, which is from experience with all the coaching I've done in the last few years, is much more widespread than anyone ever wants to talk about. It doesn't bother me. It's my industry. I've been that athlete and I coach those athletes, and they're not all that athlete, but a lot of them are. And that's just the world we live in. And I think we need to get more understanding and open about this, because at the end of the day, we can help people. It's like, when people talk about decriminalizing certain drugs because we can control it, we can educate people, and they're having it as like a seedy underbelly and doing anyone any good. I think it's the same with this very wide-ranging world of performance enhancements. And we're not just talking about your traditional things that we would call steroids, but we're talking about, we have got like SARMs and we've got peptides and we've We've constantly got new things.
Stuff you can buy online. Yeah, which is probably even worse for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, we had pro hormones. Before my era, I had older friends that were always talking about these pro hormones that really fucked them up, and excuse my French, really screwed them up and would mess up their skin and all sorts. And unfortunately, I would say that the limited experience I've had with some of these SARMs, having worked with athletes that have taken SARMs and heard good and bad reports, some of the more hardcore SARMs that you can just buy off the internet don't sound that dissimilar to some of the pro hormones in that they're kind of marketed as not androgenic and they're marketed as pure anabolic. But that's only if you stick to the tiny little dose guidelines. They'll say 30 milligrams a day. Well, everyone's doubling their dose. Of course they are.
For sure, yeah.
And then they're getting things like I said, issues with the skin. They've got the estrogen, the testosterone levels all over the place. You've got testicular suppression, which is also the main health issue with some of these performance enhancements. So, moving on, I would say that not taking those things is obviously going to be good for your health.
Yeah, definitely.
People are taking a bit of a risk-reward thing. But the issue is that these days we're so driven, thanks to social media, we're so driven about looking amazing that we won't think twice about taking a performance enhancement. And we don't want to listen when someone says to you, oh, is that good for your health? And you're like, oh, I looked on a forum, it's fine.
But yeah, nowadays, as you said, I think social media definitely plays a part in people wanting to chase that kind of dream physique. And just like you touched upon before, and I've been there as well, you're pretty much in perfect shape. And people from the outside are looking at you like, wow, this guy is literally, it looks like his body's been sculpted out of granite or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, like you said, internally, something's still missing, right? Because why do you think that is? Do you think that's mainly because you're chasing the next kind of high, or do you reckon it's because you have a certain area you want to work on just to look a little bit better? Or
I think there's a sort of cumulative build-up of being dissatisfied with whatever it is. It's like it happens in different parts of life. It happens with wealth, it happens with health, and certainly in the beauty and the fitness industry, this vanity-driven world, it kind of eventually builds up to that where you are never happy. And I think that a lot of people talk about the use of performance enhancements in sports, and a lot of people have been very blind to how it's been used in sports until every now and again you got the people that get named and shamed. You've got the Lance Armstrongs of the world that take a bullet for the rest of the team.
Yeah, I know.
And those people go, oh my God, I can't believe he was doing this and doing that. And you're like, yeah, but everybody else was as well. But nobody wants to hear that bit. They just want to jump on someone. And you think, well, hang on a minute. If you're a sports person and you're on a multi-million-pound contract and the single most important thing to you in the whole world was improving your performance and winning that race, and there was money and fame at stake, do you think that a guy, if the coach takes him to the back room and says, look, I've got this new stuff and it's completely undetectable, you've got to do it? Of course he's going to do it.
100%. Any extra edge, isn't it? At that level?
And if you apply that to a much more normal scenario where you've got a guy who's training 6 days a week, he's on his Instagram 20 times a day, maybe he's
minimum.
Maybe he's single, maybe he wants to be a sponsored athlete, all these things, these hopes and these dreams. And you might say to this kid, what's the most important thing to you right now? He's going to say, well, getting my pro card or getting a sponsor. Like, that's all he cares about. So he's like that, a high-level athlete. He's got a really big goal. And you think, right, okay, why wouldn't that person just turn and use drugs to help them achieve their goal? And that's, I think, why we're on this like kind of success-driven world. We're all under the spotlight thanks to social media. So, of course, people are going to turn to drugs to do it. And it's just a question of how we manage those people and trying to educate people at the same time.
Absolutely. And you said you've had a decade's experience pretty much as a trainer. So you've obviously trained hundreds of people from all walks of life in London there. What, based on that experience, and obviously you've done a lot of online coaching, but just for the average person, what is it you find people struggle with the most? Because another big kind of driver behind this podcast is looking to get people, long-term sustainable results.
Yeah.
Now, like 6 out of 7 people will lose a significant amount of weight in their life at some point, only to put it all back on.
Yeah.
And then, not only have you put it on and, you're kind of back to square one, but then you feel shitty about yourself. And, you, not to mention what it can do to your metabolism as well, obviously losing weight, gaining. So what I'm getting at is, what are the main struggles you found with people in terms of making these behavioral changes? Because that's what it is, right? They have to change their behaviors around food and exercise, and this has to be an incremental thing until it becomes part of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest struggles you find then with most people, James?
I think that from for a lot of people, the problem is not getting the information. I think you and I would agree.
There's almost too much information.
There's way too much information. And that itself can be detrimental. And this is why people will come to a coach, because they want to shut out the noise from Google or YouTube or that PDF that they downloaded off the internet 6 months ago that they didn't bother to look at. In my experience, the issue that we have is that some people, I just think, are better at blocking out the circumstantial, emotional, and sort of extra things that go on when it comes to things like weight loss. So if you said to your client, I need you to eat a calorie deficit, and your client says, right, well, I can absolutely guarantee that I'm going to stick to this calorie deficit for the next 4 weeks, and I'll do a fair bit of exercise, because you know that the calorie deficit is crucial, and you can screw that up in like just a few days. And actually, you can kind of do what you want in the gym within reason if you just need to lose a bit of weight. Very rarely can I ever look at a client that didn't get results and say, like, did you stick to this calorie deficit? And if they say yes, I know they're lying, and they've underreported, or they just haven't given me the full story.
Very common. I think 80% of people underreport, something like that,
Yeah, I saw some great statistics about underreporting. It was thanks to Ben Carpenter. Ben Carpenter, who was a guru of mine back in the day. He encouraged me to be a PT. He was my personal trainer for about 6 months.
Okay.
And we follow each other on Instagram. I still read his stuff. And he gave some really good statistics about underreporting, which was that people are so bad at reporting their calorie intake that even when they were done under like almost laboratory conditions, and people were told that the results were going to be completely fact-checked against the foods they actually ate, when people were told they were going to be cross-referenced piece by piece, they still underreported. And when they were told that they would actually be financially rewarded for getting it right, so as a financial reward, they still underreported.
Really? Do you think that's intentional, or do you think that's some of that? No, okay. No, because the tracking devices can be out, can't they?
It just shows how bad we are at reporting. And the main thing that gets people is what I call blindly eating.
Yeah. Mindless, isn't it?
We all do it. It's where you're standing in the kitchen, eating a mouthful of something, as you're preparing your food to track.
Yeah, we do it.
We often don't record the little bits.
I do that a lot.
And I've done it so many times. And I've been recording my own calories before in comp preps. And I stopped myself thinking, no, don't put that in your mouth. Now, to some of your listeners, that might sound ludicrous. Who would want to live a life of being restrained by tracking your food in my fitness pal? But what I say to my clients is, look, you don't have to record your food in order to achieve your calorie deficit. But if you do, and you do it religiously, God, you're going to achieve it much more likely. And if you don't record anything, chances are probably quite slim. If you just try and eat healthy, quote unquote, you just try and reduce your food intake, well, try. It's not a great start, is it? And most people that just try to do it, they never do it. And when people sit down with me and say, I haven't lost any weight, I was trying to do this, trying to do that, I unpick it and I say, right, what have you been eating? And it works out that they're overeating. It's not a very saleable concept, unfortunately. The industry doesn't like to sell that it could be that simple.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of, if it fits your macros. I'm not a fan of calorie intake is the only thing. I do massively believe that hormones play a big part. And I genuinely believe that there can be people that at certain times can be eating a modest calorie deficit and not lose weight because of other factors. And I do believe that insulin is important.
Yeah.
When I first started in this industry, I wouldn't even listen to you talking about calorie surplus or deficit. I'd be telling you it's all about insulin.
Yeah.
And we've got these two schools of thought now, and we've all seen the guys that have the Instagram page. It's all about calories. Yeah,
it destroys me, that.
And then you've got the other guys that are less popular these days, just talking about hormones and insulin.
Yeah.
And I think the correct answer is that it's a bit of both.
It's a bit of both, yeah.
But I think in most people that are struggling to lose weight, if they don't have a medical condition that they've reported to you about their thyroid, or they've got an issue with their insulin resistance, I think in most cases, if you've been a fly on the wall for the last week and you've watched them eat that supposed calorie deficit, they weren't doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've been that guy myself. I've been under comp prep conditions, and every now and again, you screw it up and you're on diet, and you know that you've gone over your calories.
Yeah.
You didn't do it in front of someone.
No,
and you didn't
exactly.
write it down. You did it on your own.
Did it on your own.
Did it with guilt.
Normally mindlessly. Yeah, with guilt. That's it. And you just like to write it off then. But you said then about underreporting and behaviors and how people we struggle as humans, right? We're always, one way or another, we're always chasing pleasure, always chasing that dopamine hit, right? Whether that's food, sex, drugs, whatever it is, right? Whatever your vice is, right? But what are so that's the main, you find that's the main struggle. With the training side of it, I was going to ask you, do you find that, obviously, if you're seeing someone once or twice a week, do you find the discipline and consistency can also be an issue with the training, or is it more a case of the nutrition?
It depends on the client. I mean, I think you get to know your client very quickly. You know, first of all, if you've got a client that's going to be working out on their own, and it's the client that works out on their own in between the sessions that you don't have to worry about so much.
Yeah, exactly.
The person that is constantly updating their training plan or whatever. And you also have clients, weirdly speaking, some of the longest standing clients that might be best from a business point of view are the ones that aren't really that interested. And they'll come and train with you when you're available, and they won't train on their own.
Yeah.
And they come to you twice a week, and that's all they do, and they really rely on you.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that probably aren't interested in the diet. It's a really interesting dichotomy. You've got these people that have a personal trainer for different reasons. And some of my most long-standing clients who've had the best relationships with have been ones that have had a more casual relationship. And it's like they can afford a trainer. And it's like it's a reason to go to the gym. And they like to be pushed hard. All these things. Then you look at someone who's more self-sufficient. Maybe it's they can't see you as often, and every session is really important. But they're grinding away behind the scenes as well. Yeah. I think for most people, though, it's the nutrition stuff is harder, and I spend my time coaching and talking to people more about their food and their exercise. Yeah, and actually, like with yourself, the more experience you get as a trainer, the more you realise that food's the mystery for everyone, and training is not the mystery. And we can be much more certain when we talk to people about training. As a strength coach, I was always more interested in training than in diet, and that's because there's so many more hard answers in the training world, and the fitness, the strength and conditioning stuff. Talking about bodybuilding, rep ranges, fibre types, tempos, loading parameters. There's a lot more kind of black and white there.
Yeah, that's it.
I find it easy to be black and white with my clients. If you want to achieve this, train like that. If you want this result, train like this. Yeah. But when we start talking about diet, it gets a little bit kind of mysterious.
That's right.
And it goes back to this issue that you and I can prescribe something for a client. We can say, right, this is the macro split. These are your micronutrients. And we give it to them, and you don't know what's going on. Once they close that door, you don't know what's going on. And even they don't know what's going on.
No, exactly.
That's why the nutrition stuff is tough.
Definitely. And talk about actually getting people to change behaviors, right? Because changing human behaviors is so difficult, right? For anyone, whatever behavior that is, you're looking to change, right? Yep. So even to change one behavior, for example, getting people to eat more vegetables. Yep. That's always one of my go-tos, because most people are grossly under eating vegetables and protein as well, I find, which is that's kind of an easy win, I think, for some people, because they're just by throwing in an extra chicken thigh or something, sometimes, or a couple of chicken thighs or an extra bit of meat, it sometimes does the trick.
Or a Quest bar.
Or a Quest bar. But he's sponsored by them now, you, James?
I wish I was.
No, but
just a Quest.
Yeah, but do you think, because I've been doing it for about 12 years now, actually, personal training.
Yeah, and me. Fair play.
Yeah, been doing it for a while, but literally it's only over the last few years, actually since I've been in Australia, where I've really changed my approach even more now, where I will get them to just do one thing at a time. Okay, let's try and eat more vegetables. You're having no vegetables, let's try and have one extra serving. Yeah. Be consistent with that, okay? Let's keep tracking, and then come back to me in a few weeks' time, or maybe a month's time, or however long that takes for you to cement that habit in so it becomes more subconscious. Yep. So they start connecting to the fact that they feel better when they eat vegetables. That's what another thing as well I like to get people to focus on is how do you feel? Do you now feel like your energy levels have improved and whatever? Then I'll bring the next thing in, and that's how I seem to get much better long-term results with people. So do you think that is important, James? Just, slow and steady wins the race kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, this concept of adopting new behaviours is a really interesting one in kind of psychology, and it applies to lots of different elements. You've got the kind of something called the stages of change model, which is sort of developed through, I think, working with sort of addicts, but you can apply it to any kind of human psychological process like that, where you've got something called the pre-contemplation phase. And this is a phase where you don't even know that your bad habit needs changing, or you don't know that you need to start eating more vegetables. And this could be as far as 6 months out from the point you change your behaviour. What happens is people around you start to sow the seed to change, and you might be resistant. So you might have said to one of your friends or your family, you should eat more healthy. And they're like, screw you, I eat how I want. And then a few months later, somebody else mentions it. So this is the pre-contemplation stage. This can take 6 months. And then the next phase is called contemplation phase. And that can take up to 3 months. This is where you start to think, maybe they're right. And you start hearing more people say it to you. You start noticing things on the internet. You start reading a bit more. And then you're into preparation stage then. This is a month out. And this is where you actually start planning to make a change and adopt a new habit. So this is the point probably where you've gone to see a personal trainer. You've actually picked up a book about dieting, or you've downloaded a course of some kind. And we're already months and months along the timeline here. Then you've got, I believe, the next stage. I don't know what the next stage is called, but that's where you actually put these new actions in, and you find something called maintenance stage. And you can go around in a circle if you fall out, and it just shows that habits do take a long time to ingrain. I think it's 60 days for a new one and 20 days to break an old one.
Wow.
So somehow the human psychology decided that a new habit is harder to do than breaking. So stopping something is easier than starting something.
Interesting. So 20 days to actually break a habit.
Yes, 21 apparently. I don't know where they
21 days. So you'd have to abstain from whatever that bad habit was, for example, and you can break it generally within. And then you said to actually build a new one, you're looking at 60 days.
I think it's 68 days. I mean, I don't know where to get these numbers from. Obviously, it depends on the person. And it's going to depend massively on, do you have like a mentor or a coach, or are you just trying to do it by yourself? Do you have people around you pulling you out of that cycle? We've all had clients that have gone, oh, but my friends did this, or my friends said that, and you're like, geez, oh my God.
That's it. So again, like you said, with information, right? Information comes from all angles, and then they second guess.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And then when you go online as well, you look at when people go online, obviously social media. Yeah. And I always say to people, you've got to be cautious about who you're following as well. Because you can follow too many people. If you want to learn about health and nutrition and start bettering yourself in that realm, then follow maybe a few people rather than following hundreds of people who are giving you all this information. A lot of it's going to be a lot of it is going to be bullshit, right? Because that's the only thing with social media, right? Everyone's an expert nowadays, right? So to siphon out the people. So I was going to say to you about because obviously you now coach a lot of athletes now leading up to shows, and what I noticed when I was competing, which is something I experienced myself as well, I had the binge eating disorder, right? So I didn't realize at the time that I had it. I knew I was binge eating, but I didn't realize I had a full-blown disorder. I was convincing myself mentally that I was eating healthy in the week, so it was okay for me to eat crap on the weekends. That's essentially what I was going, James. I was going mental, doing a number on myself right on the weekends, not eating anything nutritious, just binge eating, Dominoes, you name it, everything. And what I noticed when I was competing was like the amount of eating disorders I noticed in athletes was, and I said this to someone, was actually more. I noticed more eating disorders and really bad relationships with food, and the balance that some of these athletes had within their life was awful. Because from the outside, people would aspire to be like them or look like them, but if they knew what they're and I'm not going to mention any names, and I was there myself once as well. My relationships were crap. I was binge eating. But then I come out the other side, and then I realized that actually I saw more of the eating disorders and all that kind of stuff with people like my peers, if you like, than I actually saw in hundreds of people I've trained in my 12 years of training. So what's your take on that, James?
Yeah, it's a good observation. I think you're right. There's a density of types of eating disorder within the fitness competition scene, and from my own friends, I think one of my best friends was bulimic once when I was growing up, and that was one of my female friends. And I don't know if it's just a sort of reporting thing, so we're more aware of these disorders in our little network because maybe it's cool to talk about it. And actually, when you're outside of that network, if you're looking at normal society, people aren't putting their hands up.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
I don't think it is just that. I generally think that the pressures and the stresses and strains...
Extremes, isn't it? It's an extreme sport, right?
It is a bit extreme, and we kind of we get taught that we have to deprive ourselves. And like as you know, with anything like that, if you really do deprive, you're going to build up this yearning. And then, like you touched on, you'd be planning your weekend.
Literally, I had lists.
You had a list, and what I would do is I would make sure that I would only buy it on the day. So I'd go to the supermarket with an empty trolley.
That's what I would do. Yeah, exactly the same. Yeah.
Keep it in the house, and you'd go a bit over the top. Another thing that you see is fitness competitors binging post show. Now, this is a bad scenario for a fitness competitor. That's it's like the opposite of a reverse diet. You go and deprive yourself, you're on low calories, your body's metabolism is slowing down a little bit, and I'm not going to preach about
leading up to a show, you mean now? Yeah, of course, your body's in survival mode, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to preach about people breaking their metabolisms because I never really believed in that stuff.
Yeah, metabolic damage, you're not a big fan of that.
Not particularly. Short term slowing
you can rebuild it. Yeah.
Short term slowing down, short term suppression. But I think there's an easy fix for all these things, and it's sensible stuff like I started working out and eating sensibly. But yeah, if you starve yourself, but this post-show binging, I've done it myself many times. I see my clients do it constantly, and I always say to them, look, what you need to do is to be a little bit sensible. because I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen, and it's by the letter. You'll binge on the night of the show. You'll binge hard. That's probably okay because you had space for that extra 2,000 calories, just about. But what you're going to do is you're going to guzzle a lot of water, probably drink some alcohol, and your body ain't going to like that because you've got salt in your body, which is going to store water. You've got a load of carbs to store, and you've got a load of water going everywhere. And so what happened is tomorrow, being Sunday or Monday, depending on the show, your friends or family will want to take you out for lunch, and you'll binge hard at lunch. And even if you had a dinner plan sensible, that's gone out the window because your blood sugar's all over the place. And by that point, you thought, screw it, I've worked hard for this.
Yeah.
So then it's all the next day. So now we're talking like 5,000 calories. I said most people aren't going to stop there, but by the time you wake up on Monday or Tuesday morning, you're going to look in the mirror at yourself, and your abs will be a bit blurry. And what happened then is you're going to look to yourself and go, what have I done? Like, I've hardly eaten that. What? And you look at your abs and like, there's water there under the skin. I said, all is not lost at this point. You can pull it back, but you won't. You're going to carry on probably for a couple more days. Yeah. And everyone does it. And every now and again, someone doesn't do that. And I'm really impressed. And I said, well, good for you. You stopped one day in. I mean, no one ruined their physique with one day of binging. No,
but the water retention is extreme, isn't it? Yeah. And especially when they stop moving. The thing is, a lot of people go on vacation. I find that's a big, I've done that before, and that was an error. You go on vacation, you stop moving, you go from doing all these steps to virtually not moving and not training. I always say to people, like, that's a great time. I don't know about you, James, but going off on something else now, but after training as well, after a show, my response to building muscle is crazy. Yes. So when I go into that calorie surplus or get the calories back in and I start lifting weights again, I've got more strength and my body's ready to go again. That is the best time to build muscle, and some of the pumps you get and stuff. Did you notice that at all?
Yeah. They call it like the Rebound Effect, and I usually, if I can, I get my clients to benefit from it. I think there's a couple of things going on in the body that help us to be a little bit more anabolic. I think one of them is a temporarily enhanced insulin sensitivity, because what's going to happen most of the year is you're filling yourself with carbs, as the bodybuilder does, and maybe there's a little bit of insulin resistance can start to build, and obviously insulin being such a anabolic hormone, we need it for storing of nutrients. So I think when you've gone past a competition, you go through peak week and you've had like this kind of like, again, maybe slightly slowing down metabolism. And I think there's been a little bit of the kind of, but also a sort of upregulation in your insulin sensitivity because you've gone on low carbs. Most people do. So then I think post-show, your body's got this like suddenly, it's like a giant sponge. And also people tend to change their training patterns. So it's a bit like you go through a show, and although it's a stressful process, a lot of people are resting. They get off the weights for a few days. And most of us don't do that when we're off season, we're building muscle. We're like training 6 days a week. But I get my clients to have probably the Friday off the gym, maybe even the Saturday off. They compete on Sunday. And they might go back to the gym on a Tuesday. So they've almost had 4 days of rest then. And they've been well fed. And they've probably like temporarily loaded up with fats and salt and all the things they've kind of not had that much of for a while. Maybe even in their off season they weren't eating enough salt or enough fat. So I think the body's in a prime metabolic position to build muscle, like you said. So I think it's a good time. Take advantage of that time, listeners.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. So just a few simple questions then now, really, I guess, to wrap this up. So, when it comes to people training, let's just talk real quickly about training and building metabolism like long term, right? Because as we mentioned, it's one thing losing body fat, but keeping it off is the battle for a lot of the people listening now. This is not competitors. I'm just going to assume most people listening, just the average gym goer. So I always say to people, lean muscle tissue acts as insurance, right? Life gets in the way sometimes. We get carried away on the weekends. A lot of us do. I do it a lot. And then, we struggle then to pull it back with the calories, as you said, to maintain that calorie deficit or whatever. So do you think it's important to, firstly, correct training programming and training properly and, building metabolism and actually fueling your body with enough calories to actually just make building muscle and strength your priority for, a decent amount of time, let's just say for the best part of a year for the average person, to actually build muscle and help them build a metabolic rate and keep fat off long term? Do you think those kind of strategies for most people are effective?
Yes, they should be in theory. And it's a very good word that you use as the insurance policy of having muscle. I think we all learnt when we went to PD school that you're lean body mass was the main indicator of your metabolic rate, and that not only was having more muscle enabled you to burn a few more calories, not as many as we kind of saw, the estimated extra 200 calories per pound. That's been
really, it's like 30 to 50 calories.
It's a very small amount, and actually, I mean, God knows how many bodybuilders were overeating. They could get away with it, but anything's better than nothing. And so yeah, like I said, the insurance policy having the lean body mass. But what's happening these days is a lot of trainees, so like you and I would have gone to the gym back in the day because we enjoyed training, and I didn't start training because I wanted to have my photo taken. Believe it or not, these days it's probably the opposite. They got
That's exactly right, yeah.
And it's the wrong way around to do it, but that's another discussion. But when I was training, I built up that mature muscle. People use that term. So, you've got mature muscle on you. It takes a lot of years to build up muscle, even though we like to believe it's done in 12 weeks. There is a lot of years of training, and also training naturally as well. But what happens these days is that you'll get a trainee, comes in, they're like, right, I want to get lean. And you're like, okay, you're pretty skinny. So, yeah, then they don't want to hear about the time invested to build muscle. Because then what's going to happen is they're in this kind of cycle of wanting to get big and lean at the same time. You know how tricky that can be to manage people's mindsets. I always say to my clients, look, it's always guys that want this, and I wanted it as well. So look, I want to get big, and I also want to lose some body fat. I said, you might be able to do that for a short period of time. I've got some training programs that are really hardcore, and I've seen people do that, but it only lasts for a few weeks. You won't maintain that. It's the law of thermodynamics doesn't allow for that.
Exactly.
So I think a short-term change in stimulus and an amazing strength and conditioning program and a neutral calorie balance could get you into the kind of getting a little bit leaner and a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Kind of listen to the signals in a way then, James. When you're hungry, when you first start lifting weight, eat, but eat whole foods ideally for the most part, right?
Yeah, but unfortunately, I say once you get to a certain point, that goal will plateau. You'll either get nowhere, you won't build, and you won't lose body fat, and you've got to separate those goals and work out which one's more important to you. And that's when, like you said, the idea of building muscle to have this insurance policy and being able to have a bit of an off weekend if you want. If people haven't done that, then they set themselves up for trouble, and then they haven't got that bit of leeway that you or I might have.
Yeah, exactly.
I've always found that the bigger I was and potentially the leaner I was, the more I could afford to make mistakes.
100%.
You can't keep doing it, but I always say to people, no cheat meal is going to ruin your physique.
No,
so
exactly.
If you've woken up in the morning and told me that you felt a bit watery or heavier, it's it's just temporary.
Exactly. And just one good meal, having a few good meals, you're not going to wake up shredded, right? Looking like James over here with his slab abs.
Yeah, and actually, if you did wake up and you looked dry in the morning, it's all because of water levels in the body. I get tired of telling people again and again that it's just water, it's water weight, it's water under your skin.
Yeah.
You woke up looking dry and you go to bed looking wet, and that shows you how quickly it goes. So don't celebrate it in the morning, and don't cry to me in the evening. Exactly. Because it's only 12 hours apart.
That's it. How do you, basically, you're juggling 3 jobs pretty much, not jobs, 3 businesses, right? So do you, because I always talk to the listeners, probably getting sick of me saying it now, but I practice gratitude. Meditation is something I dip in and out of. I'm not as consistent with that. And these little tips and tricks have worked wonders for my mental health and my perception on things, like gratitude and just doing more mobility stuff, which I knew you do a lot of because you squat like a boss, mate. I've got to say your squat is insane. So I can see you put the work in with your mobility. But is there any rituals like that you have to keep you on point, James?
I was very much into self-development a few years ago. Actually, before I was a trainer, I was big into self-development, and I actually used to practice gratitude rituals. Yeah. And the big one that stuck for me was the having an attitude for gratitude. Yeah. And I just internalized it after a while. It was something that I would have to practice. And after a few years, it just embeds into me. And I always reiterate to people, it's very easy. We live in a world where we're not grateful, especially in the Western world. So the most unhappiest cultures are the Western cultures that don't practice gratitude. And we don't accept being grateful. And we don't even appreciate that it can actually be a positive mental boost to have gratitude. Yeah. And, we like to complain that life's terrible or work sucked or this happened to me, everything happened to me. And it's what we call a fixed mindset. It's everything is everybody else's fault and, everything went wrong and no one wants to take responsibility for stuff. But also realizing that if you could roll the dice, I always say this to people or to myself if I'm having a bad day, if you could roll the dice right now and the two options were 50-50, it could be much worse than this is, or it could be much better, what do you think it would likely to be if you rolled the dice? And it's like, probably worse, right? More likely to be worse. Look at all the people in the world that have got poor health, they haven't got enough food on the plate, they've got disease, persecution, all the stuff that's happening around us. So most people that I network with are healthy, wealthy, middle-class people. Yeah, they've got no reason to be unhappy or ungrateful. So you plant that seed in people's head and it starts to make them think, oh yeah, you're right. It's happened to everyone. When a relative dies or if your friend gets hit by a car, we temporarily get really grateful for our health. And we get really grateful for the fact that we're alive. And actually, this is amazing. I've got a roof over my head. This person doesn't have that choice anymore. But it just doesn't last, unfortunately.
Doesn't last. That's why you said you got to practice it, isn't it? Gratitude, attitude.
I think what I used to do was I'd wake up in the morning and my little mantra was Tony Robbins, obviously. And it was, I think it was write out and speak aloud 5 things that you're grateful for. Just say out loud how lucky I am to have my health.
I was doing that one for a bit,
and that really works for me. And like I said, since then, it just seems to be in the back of my mind more. And actually, I use it as a mood booster. Because when and I don't think it's because I have been blessed to do loads of cool stuff, but in the last 10 years of my career, I've done so much amazing stuff. I forget all the cool things I've done, the places I've been, and things people I've met. And I put my mind back and I think, oh, I remember when I was in Venice Beach, or I remember when I was in Sweden, or I remember when I was at the Body Power Expo, and all these cool things. And I go, I'm really lucky to have done that stuff. And then I go, actually, I've had a really lucky life generally, and that makes me feel good. It doesn't necessarily help anybody else, but I think any of our listeners listening could think of things that they have been lucky to have had. And I think when it gets a little bit dark and we get a little bit angry or annoyed at life, just think about the things that people don't have and how much worse it could be.
I like that. And then finally, James, do you have, just for the listeners, the audience, who want to optimize their health? Obviously, the podcast called Optimize Your Body. A lot of people, they want to feel good, but they also want to look good, right? So they want to, maybe build a physique and, perform better in general in life. So what would your top tip, motivational tips, or whatever you want to enlighten us with, James, for people to optimize their health?
Well, let's see. I mean, the best way to succeed at something is to focus on it. I like the saying that our focus becomes our reality. And what better thing to focus on than optimizing your health? I think anyone that wants to do that is in a good position these days, because when I first started training, I was reading articles from Flex magazine, and that was all about improving how you looked. And thankfully, the industry has diversified a little bit over the last 5 or 10 years, and we've started thinking about health, function, performance. And it's ironic that we've got 2 ex-bodybuilders here talking about optimizing health. And it wasn't even remotely interesting to me. It was health. I'll be the first person to admit that when I was a bodybuilder, I didn't care about my health. I cared about looking good. And it just so happened that for a while, I was able to overlap both those goals. And I think by cutting down my sugar consumption, cutting down drinking, many years ago when I was a bit more like a recreational.
You were a DJ, weren't you, back in the day?
I mean, it was alcohol, recreational drugs, all that stuff. That was my life.
Good times.
And able to phase that out slowly by actually being a bodybuilder. But then I think it went a little bit too far and it got a bit obsessive and it went unhealthy again. So if you can find that middle ground where you are able to improve how you look and how you perform and your health, I think that's the holy grail. And I think these days, really, really lucky to be able to reach out and actually get good quality supplements, just the right kind of food. I mean, we never had so much choice in the Western world about food. It's crazy. People say, well, healthy food's expensive, but there's a whole other debate there. But
100%.
I think that we are very, very lucky to be able to choose health if we want it. And you can choose performance, or you can choose a little bit of both. Certainly, as time goes on, I'm a little bit more health and performance focused. I've always liked to be a bit more well-rounded with fitness and not just be a clunky bodybuilder. And if you ask me this in 2 or 3 years' time, I'll probably be a yoga guru or something.
I'll come back to you in a couple of years' time when you next come out here, mate. We'll be doing yoga together on the beach.
I'll be another 10 kilos lighter. 15-inch arms then.
Yeah, exactly. That's the size of my arms when I'm at my best. All right, mate. Hey, James, thanks a lot for your time, man. I really appreciate it. That was a great conversation, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, mate.
No worries.
Catch up soon.